is a slightly different setup. But can you stand? And if you see that a camera is right behind you, maybe you can move over just a little. Or maybe they just need to get you right in that line of sight. You're good. Okay. There's a song that we sing in the campaign, Everybody's Got a Right to Live. Everybody's got a right to live. And sometimes we switch out the lyrics, and so we'll say, we say poverty no more. We want justice for the poor. Everybody's got a right to live. Can we all agree on that? Yeah. We say poverty no more. We want justice for the poor. All right. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. We say poverty no more. We want justice for the poor. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. We say poverty no more. We want justice for the poor. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to love. Everybody's got a right to love. Everybody's got a right to love. We say poverty no more. We want justice for the poor. Everybody's got a right to everybody. Got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. We say poverty no more. We want justice. We say poverty no more. We say poverty no more. We want justice. We say poverty. We say poverty no more. We want justice for the poor. Everybody's got a right to live. Yes, yes.
We welcome everyone. Our prayer, O source of compassion and justice, we gather as one, drawing from the wisdom and sacred texts and the legacy of righteous leaders. With resolve of anchor organizations against injustice, we stand united in our hearts and in our commitment to dismantle systems of oppression and uphold the sacred principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. O source of all compassion and love, we stand in solidarity against the forces of religious extremism that seek to divide and oppress. Inspired by the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, we declare that nobody's free until everybody's free. Like Rabbi Abraham Joshua Herschel, we march arm in arm with Dr. Martin Luther King. We recognize that prayer is meaningless unless it's subversive. We pray not only with our lips, but with our actions, challenging systems of injustice and dismantling structures of oppression. Dr. Martin Luther King reminds us, injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. We pledge to eradicate poverty and dismantle the systems of oppression that perpetuate it. For poverty is not humanity's natural state, but rather a result of unjust structures and policies. Oliver Elizabeth Hyatt, Frances Wright, Elizabeth Margaret Chandler, advocates for human rights, continue to inspire us with their unwavering commitment. We welcome each and every one. We say amen, amen, ashe, and shalom.
And we say assalamu alaikum. You may be seated. We are so thankful to all of you who have gathered here this morning. As you can see, we're a little tight, but we're going to ask some other folk to come up. If you take your chair, Brother Jackson, put them right there on the corner. Our leader here in Washington, D.C., the tri-chairs from D.C., just put your chairs right there on the corner, because this is movement time. This is movement time, and when it's movement time, we can all be together. We are here this morning, and I'm here with our powerful co-chair, Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, and a bunch of people that you're going to hear from in a minute that we call anchoring partners. Not all of them. We'll be back probably early June to announce other anchors that are coming in. But we are here this morning to announce that on June the 29th at 10 o'clock on Pennsylvania and 3rd, we are calling for the mass poor people's low-wage workers assembly and moral march on Washington and to the polls, June 29, 2024. On March the 2nd, we had simultaneous actions in 35 states and the District of Columbia, where poor and low-wage persons, religious and moral leaders, and advocates joined at state capitals to launch a campaign to touch 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters in this country. This is the most massive block where transformation can happen. Over 33 million infrequent voters, poor and low-wage voters that can make a difference. In this season that we're in, our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate. And in states that we call battleground, we believe we really don't know what battleground states are because we've never seen a full mobilization. But in states that are called mobilization, battleground, according to a study we did commissioned by Liz and myself that was done with professors from Columbia University and others, we now know that in those states where the margin of victory was 3% or 5% in Texas, that the number of poor and low-wage voters are between 35 and 40+% of the electorate. We also know that there are numbers out there like these. Where Liz is from, Wisconsin, the margin of victory in the last election was about 20,000 votes, but the number of poor and low-wage voters that could have voted was over 1 million. In Michigan, 10,000 was the margin of victory in president. The number of votes, poor and low-wage voters that could have voted that didn't was over 1 million. In Pennsylvania, 40,000, the number of poor and low-wage voters that could have voted was over 1.4 million. In North Carolina, the margin of victory was about 170,000, but the number of poor and low-wage voters was right at 1 million, just under 1 million, over 900,000. In other words, in those 4 states alone, which are states that are deeply concerned in the political structures, you had over 4 million poor and low-wage voters that could have voted that didn't, but the margin of victory was only 270,000 votes. Poor and low-wage voters are saying in this season that our votes are demands and not merely support for candidates. And what we're doing is mobilizing those votes and saying to candidates, if you want these votes, then talk to poor and low-wage folk. The number one reason poor and low-wage folk do not vote, according to the study, is Waking the Sleeping Giant, is nobody talks to them. We have debate after debate for Senate, for president, and the issues that affect poor and low-wage persons do not come up. We had in 2020 a bill come up to pass a living wage of $15 an hour in the union, which would have lifted 52 million poor and low-wage Americans out of poverty and low wage. 43% of African Americans alone. Most of the persons would have been white and women. And 8 Democrats and 49 Republicans said no to 52 million Americans. That 70% of Americans want a raise in the living wage because we haven't raised the minimum wage since 2009. Poor and low-wage folk and moral and religious leaders are saying no more. We must mobilize this power. And we want the media to be clear that when we talk about poverty, we're talking about in all of its areas: race, gender, geography. A third of all poor people live in the South. A third of all poor white people live in the South. Nearly 60% of black people are poor and low wage. But the majority of people who are poor and low wage are white. Over 40 million more than the number of black folk in raw numbers. The largest demographic of poverty is among women, predominantly white women. And our children now are 51% of all children are poor and low wage. These are serious matters, and we have serious power. So this is an offensive move. We're calling on people to come by the thousands to join with us. This is a time for a mass mobilization of consciousness, to call people to vote. We don't just need a political vote this year, we need a movement vote that's not based on party, but based on principle, based on where people stand on critical issues. So we're calling on folks out. This is a nonviolent. We are the resurrection, not an insurrection. That's why we're coming. And we're saying the last picture of what of D.C. ought not be people tearing the Capitol up and trying to tear democracy down. We need a picture of folk trying to build a democracy up and lift up all people, regardless of who they are. Regardless of who they are. So that's why we're coming. We have critical anchor partners that I will be introducing in just a moment. We have a promo we want you to see just before Reverend Liz comes, but we want folk to be very clear. Poor and low-wage people now have the power to shift and shape any election if they mobilize their power. Later on, Celinda Lake, who is a tremendous projector, will also talk about what this means and how she has said that anybody running for office that doesn't speak to the issues of poor and low wage for people not only violate the Constitution that requires that we promote the general welfare of all people, not only violates our scriptures that says nations will be judged by how we treat the least of these, but it makes no political sense. It's a form of political foolishness and suicide not to reach out to 87 million potential voters. And here is the agenda that we're unifying around. Now, every group up here doesn't agree. We're not to say don't agree. Some groups can't, for instance, speak on certain issues because it's not within their agenda. But what we've decided is we have to come together where we can come together. And that one thing affects the whole. Because we've learned something. The same people that vote against living wages vote against women's rights. And the same people that vote against women's rights, they vote against public education. And the same people that vote against public education, Liz, they vote against health care for all. And the same folk that vote against health care, they tend to vote against environmental justice. So if they are cynical enough to be together, we need to be smart enough to come together. So here's the agenda, and then we'll have the promo, and then our co-chair, Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, will come to the mic, and then we'll have others follow suit. Number one, our number one issue, I want you to hear this out there on the media. Poverty kills 295,000 people a year. It's the fourth leading cause of death in this country, over 800 people a day. Abolishable unnecessary poverty. Our first item, abolishing poverty as the fourth leading cause of death in the U.S. If you want these votes, you need to talk to people about what if you get elected, how will it impact this agenda? Number two, a living wage of at least $15 an hour indexed for inflation, so we don't have to keep doing it every year or every other year. Three, full and expanded voting rights. Full and expanded voting rights. Which includes things like D.C. statehood as well, because that's a violation of voting rights. But it also includes stopping more than 1,000 voter suppression bills that have been passed since the Voting Rights Act was gutted in 2013. No more voter suppression. Guaranteed worker rights and labor rights. Health care for all. Affordable, adequate housing. Strong social welfare and safety net programs. An end to gun violence and the proliferation and profiteering off of guns, fully protected women's rights, environmental justice that secures clean air and water and land, justice for all indigenous nations, fully funded public education, just immigration laws, addressing militarism and the war economy. And 16, standing for peace, not war, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza that allows immediate humanitarian relief, a release of all hostages, peace and justice be pursued, and in addition, an end to genocide around the world. Because we care about poor people in this country, we have to care about what's happening with poor people around the world. And then lastly, an end to hate, division, and the extremist political agenda. That's what poor and low-wage people will be listening for when candidates talk to them. That's what will mobilize them to get out and vote. That's what will wake this sleeping giant, and we intend to wake it all the way up. We will be leaving here today and mobilizing 7,000 activists that will be training in 35 states plus the District of Columbia, who are making a commitment to waive the 7,000, 45 a day, 6 days a week, over an 8-week period, actually means we can touch between 15 million and 16 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters every 8 weeks. We are working, and we're serious about what we're doing. I'm leaving here and going to Alabama to be with UAW and workers that are fighting in the South, and then to stay with 4 or 5 families over the course of the next month or so who are poor and low wage. We are serious. Amen. We are serious. We've been building now for 4 years, since 5 years almost, since 2018, 2016, 2017, 2018. Well, 6 years, right. But whatever the years have been, the bottom line is we never built to be quiet. We never organized to sit on the limelight. We understand in this world you have to have voter participation, you have to have legislation, you have to have litigation, and you have to have nonviolent agitation. And we are committed to. Can we see the...
Somebody's killing poor people, and it's going on. Yeah.
When COVID happened, poor people were dying at a rate already of 800 people a day. Before COVID, if you went to a funeral every single day, it would take you 600 years to attend all the funerals of the people who will die from the ravages of policy violence, poverty, and low wages in America in just 1 year. It would take you 2 years and 19 days to go to all of the funerals of the people that will die today, and oftentimes silence. Nobody talks about this political genocide, but we are determined today to remember their death and be a resurrection of voting power and voice power like never before.
Economic justice and saving this democracy are deeply connected. We, as a nation, must listen to the demands of the poor, who are pushing and will continue to push political candidates and elected leaders to lift from the bottom so that everybody can rise.
Take back the mic! Take back the mic! Take back the mic! Take back the mic!
We are the poor, the marginalized, and the underpaid. And we are taking one step forward to say that everybody has a right to live.
Poverty is not the fault of those who are impoverished. It is caused by those who make the policy.
There are over 135 million poor and low-wage, low-income people in this nation.
The biggest block of potential voters by far is low-income, low-wage voters.
I can't afford medicine. Sometimes I have to skip because of the cost.
The farm worker community is tired of the violence imposed upon us by greed, exclusion, and denial of basic human rights.
Those folk that represented by that casket, poor and low-wage workers who are the most moral people in this country because they go to work every day believing, even though going to work is hazardous to their health.
I'm tired of working 70 to 80 hours a week and still not have money for the necessity of bills. I'm tired of getting sick and not being able to go see the doctor. Having to make a choice to pay between rent or the light bill or food or clothes.
You cannot claim to care about families and a culture of life and then do everything in your power to rob people of equal access to resources and to force them to live in poverty.
Leadership of both parties have waged war on poor people and low-wage workers.
And this government has treated people experiencing poverty, including their military families, with disdainful, deliberate, malicious neglect.
So the truth is that my son died from poverty.
We refuse to accept poverty as the fourth leading cause of death.
The fourth leading cause of death in this, the richest country in the world.
We march today for our children and the generations to come. And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
We will voice our demands and register our vote.
When we stand up and when we stand together, things change.
There is the electorate that is, and then there is the electorate that should be.
34 million eligible poor and low-income voters did not vote in 2016. If just 20% of those voters in swing states were mobilized around an agenda, they could change the political outcome of every election. So we're launching the most massive voter mobilization and turnout campaign in history of poor and low-wage voters, allies, and religious leaders.
People are dying, but we know it doesn't have to be this way. And so we are calling on everyone to join us in this Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival.
We are here, we will be seen, we will be heard, and our power will be felt. We don't need to be an insurrection. We are a resurrection that will be felt across this country. Are you ready? Ready, ready, ready. We are a resurrection, and we are ready. And we won't be silent anymore. This promo is being released as of today everywhere and every nook and corner on social media and everywhere it can be sent, because we're inviting thousands and thousands to come and join us in this gathering. I want to ask just Reverend Cass to come and read a statement from Roz. She could not be here with us this morning, Fred, but she is always, going to be on point. So she's going to read a statement, then Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, and then right after her, we have online Celinda Lake, who wants to talk to us from a pollster's perspective, and then we'll bring up other persons after them.
Good morning. This is a statement from Attorney Roz Pellis, who serves as our senior advisor for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. This is a crisis moment for our nation and our democracy. A democracy must meet the needs of all its people. In order for our nation not to continue down this path of neglect of the needs of the many, extreme wealth for the few, and the denial of basic rights and freedoms that diminish our democracy, we need for our political leaders to become moral leaders and take seriously the needs and priorities of the millions of people struggling simply to survive. Congress must lead by bringing together and bringing forward comprehensive legislation that serves the needs of all people, like the restoration of the child tax credit and the raise of the minimum wage. The media must do more by covering the experiences of people struggling to get by, not just with the words and whims of the wealthy and the powerful. And the White House must treat poverty like the crisis that it is, if this administration is serious about saving our democracy. We must come together today as a coalition of consciousness, partnering organizations representing millions across the country impacted by this crisis. Today, we must speak with one voice as we raise demands for a restoration and expansion of fundamental rights. We have fought and died for fair wages for the work that we do, legislation and policy that ensures a safety net for our elderly, our young, and a high-quality standard of living for all. That is more than possible in the wealthiest nation in the world. Our pledge today is to make America a nation for all its people. We will assemble in Washington, D.C. on June 29th to make our voices and demands heard. We will then fan out all over the country to raise the issue that must be addressed in 2024 and beyond by politicians at the levels of government, and we will cast our votes in November. We must come together with this ever-growing coalition representing the millions of powerful assembling and moral march on Washington on June 29th and on into the polls in November. And as we say in this movement, forward together and not one step back. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. We're gathered together today as poor and low-income people, as clergy and moral leaders, as advocates and activists, agitators and organizers. We're from more than 30 states, from rural and urban areas of all genders and sexualities, races and ethnicities. We're from many different religious traditions and those not observant of a particular faith, but who believe we must bend the arc of history towards justice. We are young and old and all the way in between. We are some of the 135 million poor and low-income people in the richest country to ever exist. And we're mobilizing and organizing and educating people. And we'll be here in Washington, D.C. on June 29th, just 2 months from today, hearing the demands of poor and low-income voters, waking this sleeping giant, enlivening and enlarging the electorate of poor and low-income voters. When he was announcing the Poor People's Campaign more than 50 years ago, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Power for poor people will really mean having the ability, the togetherness, the assertiveness, and the aggressiveness to make the power structure of this nation say yes when they may be desirous to say no." Well, we are tired of no's. No to raising the minimum wage. No to expanding health care for all. No to call for fund war no more. No to programs of social uplift and economic uplift. No to ending death by poverty. And so we're building power for yeses. Yeses to invest in education. Yes to immigrant rights. Yes to voting rights. Yes to LGBTQ rights and women's rights. And to honoring and respecting indigenous peoples and tribes. Yes. 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 To lifting from the bottom so that all of us may rise and thrive and not just barely survive. We know and we have heard and we will continue to hear this morning that poor and low-income voters make up nearly 40% of the electorate in some key places. And when we come together around a moral agenda, we have the power to fundamentally transform the politics of this nation. When we launched the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival about 6 years ago with the largest and most expansive wave of nonviolent civil disobedience at state capitals, we committed that we needed to gather in Washington, D.C. in June, every year before a big election, and invite elected officials and presidential candidates to hear the demands of this movement, to build this power, and to prepare for the work that we have ahead of us. It's immoral and it's wrong that we throw out more food than it takes to feed everybody. It's immoral and it's wrong that there are 5 abandoned homes for every unhoused person in this country, and yet millions have nowhere to lay their heads. It's immoral and wrong that there's not a county, a city, a town, anywhere in this country where someone working full-time on the federal minimum wage can even afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. And yet richest corporations are making billions, even trillions, on the back of low-wage workers. But as we know in this campaign, it does not have to be this way. The issues most important to the daily lives of the majority of people in this country are on the ballot this year, and we are turning up and turning out. We're going to make these politicians hear us because we are the people who have the power to transform this society. And when we show up for this mass poor people and low-wage workers assembly and moral march on Washington and to the polls, we're going to build the world that we all have the right to be in. We're going to build this movement. We're going to be led by the people. We're going to come together. We're going to reject this distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. We're going to choose life and truth and justice and peace, and let us move forward together, not one step back.
Amen. 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 What we're talking about is not just hyperbole. The scriptures even tell us that the stones that the builders rejected can come together and be the cornerstones of a brand new reality. We know that we've connected around systemic, the 5 interlocking injustices: systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, denial of health care, the war economy, and the false, distorted narrative of religious nationalism. That unites us, enables us, as Reverend Liz said, to push for yeses. It's hard work, but it's necessary work. It's not something we can just talk about, we got to be about it. And that's why before the end of this press conference, we will introduce you to more than 30 states where people, the real folk, are organizing and mobilizing, all of them right now gathering 200 people that will be trained in this kind of activism and mobilization. Somebody said, why didn't y'all decide to do a lesser number? Because we believe in big things. This is a big issue, and we need a big mobilization. And we're not doing it alone. This is not a top-down, this is a bottom-up movement. So Linda, you're online, and you do this work all the time and help us understand the numbers. We want you to talk to us right now and talk to the nation. So Linda Lake.
Thank you, Reverend. And thank you all, because I think this is, of all of the things we are doing this year, this is literally the most important Pete, strategically, and the most morally right thing to be involved in. It's a great privilege to be on. I just want to reiterate what other spokespeople have said, but do it from a pollster's point of view, which is to say this is literally the largest untapped block that could produce a seismic political change in our system. In every single state that is close, in every strategy you embark on, whether it's go through the South, the blue wall, pick up Arizona, whatever the strategy is in the swing states, literally in every single swing state, as you outlined, Reverend, 10 to 80 times the number of margin of victory are poor people who do not vote. As you said, Arizona, 10,000 margin, 839,000 poor people who didn't vote. Georgia, 12,000 margin, 746,000 people who didn't vote. Wisconsin, 20,000 and 1 million. North Carolina, 74,000, 1.1 million. Every single state you turn into, 10 times to 80 times the margin of victory were present in poor people who didn't vote. But there is secret sauce here in this program. We can talk about it, but there are 3 things politically that I think this effort does that is truly, truly unique. One is reaching out to these voters at the grassroots. It isn't a top-down model. It's a bottom-up model. It's in community. It's local, and that's what will make the most difference. 2, to provide candidates with the information to talk to voters about their real lived experience and what matters to them in their life. And 3, there are initiatives in a number of states that can help bring these voters out. I won't mention all of them, but in Arizona, Ohio, and Michigan, we have one fair wage on the ballot. You can talk to poor people. Don't go out and vote just for these politicians. Go out and vote yourself a raise. That's motivating, coming from local voters, local voices. So again, this is politically game-changing. And it's not just at the margins. It's at the core of a seismic change that could leave things different politically. And if we look back on 2024 and don't get involved in this campaign, I think we will literally look back and look at either a game-changing decision we could have made or the stupidest political strategic decision not to get involved in this. So it's a great privilege to be here, and thank you, Reverend, for all you do, and everyone on this call.
Thank you, Celinda. Thank you. And she's looking at those numbers hard, just like we do, because our movement is both oratorical and it is also studious. We believe in connecting the two together. So if you're out there, the Mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington to the polls, June 29, 10 o'clock, 2024. If you're about love, if you're about justice, you're about establishing justice, if you're about nonviolence, if you're about lifting up everybody, then join us. And Liz said something we want to also, I want to reiterate what she said. We fight the campaign, people, the running, come. Now, you won't get to speak from the stage, because that's for poor and low-wage folk, as she said. That's what. But come and hear. Come and listen. Whatever party you're, come out. Tell your folk to come out, because isn't it high time that we hear from impacted folk, right? That's right. We hear from impacted folk, and that's what this campaign has always been about. And so right now, what we want to do is, last year, the last election, we organized 400 people. We've already tested this model and touched 2.7 million voters. And we have the metrics where we can show where the number of persons that weren't voting that we turned out and the difference they made in states. So this is not just hyperbole. This is serious, studied out agenda and work in activism. And we want to have now Elena Hurley from West Virginia. Is that right? And Will Cal from Massachusetts. Come on up here together, because we stand together. And they're going to come as impacted workers to invite their peers and others, and to say why they are mobilizing and why they are part of this movement. And they represent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people across this country that are organizing. Amen. Give them a big hand. How you doing, Lane? Good to see you. Y'all come on up here together.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's a great honor and a privilege to be here. But more than that, I'm here with purpose.
That's right. That's right.
My name is Elena Hurley. I'm from the state of West Virginia. I am a tri-state chairperson with the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign. I am one of the 666,000 poor and low-wage workers in my state. This accounts for 37.9% of the population. There are 313,952 people, or 39.7% of the working force earning less than $15 an hour. I am one of those people. Hardships. I'm a person living with disabilities. I have been determined by the Social Security Administration as disabled, therefore a recipient of SSDI. $708 a month is not enough to live humanely. Why am I working and earning less than what it requires to sustain my basic living needs when I have no business working while enduring physical disabilities that make basic daily tasks challenging? I'm not alone. We just heard the gentleman on the video, and he said working is hazardous to his health. That's right. That's right. I had to make a sacrificial decision to return to the workforce just so I can try to meet basic human needs such as shelter, food, water, and utilities. I've had numerous utility termination notices that never seem to end, sometimes having to go without electricity, running water or heat until the next payday, or the rigorous search for the government assistance programs only to be told I am ineligible because my income exceeds the guideline amount. With disability income and work income, I make a few dollars above the poverty threshold, leaving me not eligible for Medicaid. I've lost my Medicaid, my SNAP benefits, while maintaining a job with no health care benefits. My son's senior graduation year of 2023, I had to make the agonizing choice between purchasing his cap and gown or pay the bills. I inevitably chose to buy his cap and gown. Policymakers, you were not going to steal that joy from my son and me. Since returning to work at less pay than what it takes to live humanely, I've lost my SNAP benefits, my Medicaid, and am ineligible for most government assistance programs. On April 21st of last week, 2024, I was admitted to the hospital for a stomach ulcer and gastrointestinal complications. My ulcer and gastro complications are partially stress-induced by incessant worry of providing for me and my family. I am exhausted physically and mentally, but not broken spiritually.
That's right, that's right, that's right. That's it, Elaine.
It is by the Spirit of God, love for my brothers and sisters in the struggle, that I am here today, mobilizing and organizing to get myself and West Virginia to Washington, D.C. on June 29th, and mobilizing and organizing to the polls this upcoming November election and beyond.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. New tri-chair.
Yes.
New.
New
She's
tri-chair.
a new tri-chair. Oh,
Yeah.
power.
Yes.
That's right.
Good morning.
You okay? You okay?
Good morning. My name is William Kale, and I am from the great state of Massachusetts, where 2.3 million Massachusettsans are poor and low income, accounting for 34% of the state's population, and is home to 1.3 million poor and low income eligible voters who make up 23% of the electorate. I am a PCA with SEIU 1199 and a coordinator with the Mass Poor People's Campaign. I began apologies.
No, don't apologize, brother.
I began to experience homelessness at the age of 4. There were many nights where I had to sleep on the streets alone without the security and protection of my mother or father. I was in the DSS system from the time I was 8 until 17. My family life was so tough, I knew I was better off alone in the streets than at home. Low-wage paying jobs, violence, alcohol, and abuse of all kinds, caused in large part by poverty, was the main reason for my family's situation. As an adult, I went from working at McDonald's to becoming a personal care assistant. Despite my hard work as a personal care attendant, or PCA, being a father of 5 beautiful daughters has been extremely difficult over the years. COVID has made it even more difficult, and continued raised prices have made it near impossible, impossible, I say, to survive and thrive in this society. I find myself continuously struggling to ensure my children have the best life that I can provide. When I first started working as a PCA, I was only working 5 to 10 hours a week. What started out as a few hours a week with no benefits at all has become a career with 20 years of service as a unionized member of 1199 SEIU.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
1199 SEIU, the union that represents personal care attendants in Massachusetts, recently reached new contract negotiations after a bitter several months of negotiations with the state of Massachusetts. The 3-year contract will gradually increase pay for PCAs, which, by the way, does not meet the basic rate of pay for $32 an hour to live in Massachusetts. This contract win came with a cruel act by Governor Haley of Massachusetts in attempting to cut 6,000 or more vulnerable people in need of services from the PCA program who have 10 hours or less, and diminishing the quality of care for those that remained on the program. If that was the case 20 years ago, the person I care for, as well as many others, would not have lived as long as they have. It takes jobs away from passionate home care workers. It removes needed services from our most vulnerable and valued citizens. Also, the state can save a few dollars. That's just sad. Some Massachusetts lawmakers, along with Governor Haley, has redefined the needs for those living with disabilities based on their own unintelligible and insensitive intellect, and rather than the expertise of healthcare providers and experts. Governor Haley claims there is a need to balance the Massachusetts budget, and the best way to do it is on the backs of those with disabilities, all while giving tax incentives to corporations. This is cruel, unjust, and inhumane. This is why there is a need for the Poor People's Campaign, and this is why I am in this movement. To take back the mic from the extremists, raise our voices and votes, and make our power felt from the State House to the White House. To wake the sleeping giant, and to be a resurrection, not an insurrection. Massachusetts Poor People's Campaign is organizing and mobilizing to D.C. for June 29th and to the polls in the upcoming November election and beyond. Thank you.
Yes, sir. This is the power. You can take that with you. You can take it. And all over the country, all over, these are the voices that will be centered. Did you hear him say, let's say it together, take back the mic from the extremists, organize our power, make our votes heard and felt, and we are a resurrection, not an insurrection. Mass poor peoples, low-wage workers, assembly, and moral march on Washington, and to the polls, June 29th, 2024. Waking the sleeping giant, organizing to mobilize, touch, and move 15 million poor and low-wage, infrequent voters. And brothers and sisters, here's the other piece you should hear. Most of these voters are already registered. The issue is they have said that nobody talks to them. Well, when nobody talks to you, you have to make them talk to you. And you organize your power, and that's what's happening. Now, we want to thank our brothers and sisters for coming. And now we're going to have some anchor partners. This is not all of them. These are folk who are saying they're going to mobilize their constituencies, and they're going to come and tell you how large those constituencies are as we build together. This is really, the Poor People's Campaign is not another organization. We're a movement. We're a movement. We invite everybody. We're not into turf wars. We're into transformation. And so we are on C-SPAN for about an hour. We're asking everybody to come and take 2 minutes. Now, we allowed the impact to do longer. We want you to take 2 minutes and say from your perspective why you are mobilizing, The first person that we're going to have to come, who's been with us from the beginning, been arrested and all kinds of stuff, most folk up here have is the Reverend Dr. Theoharis Owens, who is the president of the Disciples of Christ, the general president of the Disciples of Christ. Following her, we will then have Bishop Vashti McKenzie, who has said that the entire National Council of Churches is going to be mobilizing both on the 29th and in this effort to mobilize voters. And then we're going to have Roz Pellis, this great friend. She told me to tell you hello. But Fred Redmond, the Secretary-Treasurer, represent the President of the entire AFL-CIO. This is huge stuff. This is historic, that have said we're uniting and coming in. and then a representative from Mary Kay Henry with SEIU. Is that a ratio? Is ratio? Ross, that's right here. That's right. Rossio, how you doing? It's been a long time. I know. But we also want you to know that George Gresham sends his regards, and that SEIU 1199 is also going to be mobilizing. And historically, you should know that they stuck with Dr. King, for instance, when others didn't. And you should also know that today is, I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is the 13th, let me see, the 11th anniversary of the beginning of Moral Monday in North Carolina. So the stars, this afternoon, the first 50 people would have gone into do civil disobedience, which led to tens of thousands and victory in a southern state. But it took us 4 years of fighting, because we're in it to win it for the long haul. So let me invite them to come as anchor, take the time that they have, and then we're going to bring up everybody else in that afterwards.
I'm honored to represent over 3,000 congregations of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, and nearly 500,000 members and parishioners. As a Christian minister, I'm inspired and informed by the teachings of Jesus Christ, simply to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. This means that I want for others what I want for myself. A living wage indexed by inflation that allows me to provide for my family, health care for all, safe and affordable housing, quality schools that do not depend on my zip code, the ability to vote without fear of intimidation or suppression, safety in the streets for my children from gun violence. This love means that I want to be sure that there is a safety net to ensure that no one suffers needlessly. Too often we hear that these policies are too costly. Well, I argue that if we claim to be a moral and just society providing for justice and the common welfare, we must ensure that those who do the work to build societal wealth share in societal wealth, not just the 1%. The income of just one of these people among the 1% could shift the very nature of our country and our economy if that amount were used to strike down barriers to economic, social inequity. We disrespect the humanity of over tens of millions of poor and low-income workers and voters when we say that they cannot share in the fruits of their own labor, when we say that it is okay for them not to be able to thrive. America, we have beautiful documents, beautiful words that we say. But poor and low-income workers do not realize and recognize these ideals in their reality. And if we are truly the nation that we say we are, we must march and vote so that elected officials will be demanded to enact policies that ensure that all have enough in our society. Let us be the nation that we say we are. There is enough, and we must show up in numbers to march, and we must show up in numbers to vote, because there is enough.
There is enough. There is enough. Bishop McKenzie, National Council of Churches. We need to bring in the room to sound up some. We're trying to make sure the volume comes up in the room. Zoom, yes. Yeah. You getting her up? All right, that's good. You know, Liz, they always say, every time they pass money for military, they don't ever say it's a problem. But it's time now to not have a problem when it comes to funding, dealing with poor people and low-wage people. There is enough. Bishop, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Dr. Barber.
We hear you now.
Me? Bishop
Yes.
Barber, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today, and thank you for everyone who has shared thus far. And Dr. Terry Holt Owens, who is also a part of the National Council of Churches. We represent 37 denominations, 100,000 congregations, and more than 30 million members. And we are here today to shed light on the urgent and dire circumstances faced by so many families and individuals in our country. As an anchor sponsor of the Poor People's Campaign upcoming March, we are committed to advocating for those who are living well below the poverty line, struggling to make ends meet on a daily basis, and unable to access basic necessities for themselves and for their families. Every day, countless children go to bed hungry. Parents work multiple jobs just to put food on the table. Families are forced to make impossible choices between paying bills and seeking medical care. This is not a statistic. These are not numbers on a page. These are real people with real lives who are suffering due to the systemic inequalities that plague our country. Our legislators, our political leaders have a moral obligation to use their power and influence in state houses, in Congress, and in communities across the country to address the urgent issues and work towards solutions that promote economic justice and well-being for all American citizens. So we call on our elected officials to prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable among us and to champion policies that uplift and support those who are marginalized and disenfranchised. We will not go silently into the night. And so we're going to stand together, raise our voices, and demand change. The time is now. The time is now for action is right now. We cannot afford to ignore the cries of the suffering and the pleas of the oppressed. So let's commit ourselves to creating a future where poverty is eradicated and where every person is able to live with dignity and respect, where justice and equality prevail for all of us. Yes, there is enough.
Yes, yes, there is enough. I'm glad that the bishop said eradicate. We need to talk abolish and eradication, not just treating it a little bit. Not just treating it a little bit. Let's welcome our dear friend who's the Secretary-Treasurer for AFL-CIO, Brother Fred Redmond, who's bringing them to the table on today. Fred, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I am Fred Redmond, the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. We're a federation of 60 national unions representing 12.5 million working people in every state and territory and in all parts of our economy. We are honored and we are committed to come together with Bishop Barber and Dr. Theoharis and the Poor People's Campaign and our partners in the faith and civil rights and social justice movements to mobilize working people and use our collective voice to demand an end to systemic economic injustice and this scourge of poverty. The American labor movement, we fight for all working people and their families. We fight injustice in our communities and at work, and we are committed to vanquishing oppression in all of its forms. And look, there is no greater form of oppression than when a country with immense resources and wealth allows its people to suffer and die from a lack of resources. Poverty is a failure of the system. It exists because we allow it to exist. And Dr. King knew that. He saw poverty for what it was, a moral failing of our government. A government that allows its people to go hungry, to live unsheltered, to live sick or injured without access to health care. It is a morally bankrupt government. A nation, Dr. King said, cannot be a great nation if it is not a compassionate nation, if it cannot care for or concern itself with the nation's most vulnerable. It does not allow for the full humanity of every single person within its borders. Workers' rights, civil rights, and human rights are on the ballot this election. And America's voters will decide that we're going to stay the course and keep on this path toward a more compassionate government or revert back to its morally bankrupt nation. Look, the American labor movement is committed to registering, mobilizing union members and union families around the mass mobilization on June the 29th. And we're going to elect lawmakers who will advocate for workers and poor people, to elect leaders who will put people over profits, protect our democracy, and advance worker and civil and human rights. Look, together, we can put an end to poverty and create a more compassionate nation. And together, we will do just that. Forward together, not one step back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Redmond. Thank you, Doctor. People say, how are you going to do 17 million? Not by ourselves, we're partners. We bring it together. When we all get together, what a day of justice will be. SEIU, been with us from the beginning. All right, love you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Barber. Thank you, thank you. It's so great to be here. And I'm sending greetings for President Mary Kay Henry and Secretary Treasurer April Barrett. But it's just wonderful to be in solidarity with so many of you partners and in this incredibly important cause. SEIU represents 2 million service and care workers, and we believe in a vision of a just society where all people are respected and all workers are valued, where all families and communities thrive, and where we live a better and more equitable world for generations to come. And I want everyone to know that SEIU is ready to mobilize on June 29th, and we are ready for a massive border mobilization to get people to the polls in the fall and continue to build power after the election. SEIU members know what is at stake in this election: our democracy, our economy, our future. But we also know that it takes all of us in this room to be together, to organize, to mobilize with many more partners, because we're gonna mobilize our power. We're gonna build our power, and we are gonna protect our power. We're very excited to join the efforts to reach out to millions of multiracial borders across the country. Our goal is not only to turn out votes, but to build power in communities of color and end poverty, wage, jobs once and for all. Service and care workers will be in motion all year round, demanding that candidates stand up to corporations, fighting back against attacks on our democracy, and demanding that all jobs be good jobs that pay families sustainable wages with the opportunity to join together in a union. Because our votes are our demand for a better future, we won't be distracted or divided by extreme attacks on immigrants or right-wing social issues. We are united and look forward to continue to work with all of you and to just make sure that we mobilize, we organize, and we win. Thank you so much.
And we win. Forward together. It was Mary Kay that came up with, I like to give folk credit for what they say. Mary Kay was the one that said, our votes are not support, but demands. Our votes are demands. So the folk that want these votes, what you need to do is let us hear in your TV ads, in your radio ads, and in your speeches, call the name of poor and low-wage folk and identify not what you've done, but what will you do if you get the office or if you're in the majority. That's what folk need to hear. We have about 10 minutes on C-SPAN, but we're going to continue the live stream. So what I'm going to do is make a roll call so that everybody can be seen and heard on C-SPAN, and then we will continue the live stream. We'll continue, and we have thousands of people tuned in to live stream. So I want to call some folk first. Just so you stand real quick. We're still going to get you to the mic, but I want folk to know who you are. Presbyterians, Reverend Jimmy Hawkins. Where are you at? Reverend Jimmy Hawkins. That's right. We're going to still come to the mic. USSW. Down south. There you are. USSW in the house. All right. Common Cause, been with us from the beginning. Virginia, she's new at Common Cause. That's our sister. Good Trouble, and Make It Plain, Reverend Mark Thompson. Ain't nobody like the National Council of Jewish Women, Sheila Katz. She's been right there with us. Right there with us. All right. Muslim Islamic Faith Imam Sharif, online. Unitarians. Where's Reverend Ava? He's right here. This brother been everywhere with us. Everywhere. We know Forward Justice. I don't know if they're in the house. online, Forward Justice, who's building our legal team to make sure we do it right. AME Church, Reverend Gail Holiness and Reverend Mariah Cruz. All right. Kentucky for Commonwealth, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, online. Dr. Chris Zacharias from the AME Zion Church, right here, mobilizing in D.C. And I want those organizers to stand up. Where's Clinton and Mads and Sig and who else? Clinton and Mads and Sig and Danielle and, because I'm getting old now, my mind sometimes, huh? That's all of us. Lord have mercy. That's all of us. And we're bringing some more. So we're thankful to everybody. And we're also at the end going to have Miss Yara Allen talk about how artists are organized. Where's Miss Yara Allen? Artists, Theo Music Colleges across the country. And Alice said, where is she from? Cairo. Stand up out. Yeah. We're bringing everybody in. Say everybody in. Nobody out. Now we want to do this. Alabama. Online. Turn it online up. If you're online, Alabama, say forward together.
Forward together. Alabama's in the house.
All right. California.
Forward together. California's in the house.
Are you mobilizing?
Yes, we are.
All right. Delaware.
Delaware's in the house, and we are mobilizing.
All right. Georgia.
Georgia is here. We are mobilizing, organizing, and educating.
Uh-oh. All right. Illinois. Indiana. I know they're up there because I got a check here. They might have to be on mute.
Indiana, in the house.
All right. Kentucky.
Voting.
Good. Kentucky. Maine. Okay, great.
We are mobilizing.
All right. Maine.
Maine is ready to go. Forward together.
All right. Maryland.
Maryland is mobilizing.
All right, Maryland. Massachusetts.
Massachusetts is in the house and ready to mobilize.
Nebraska.
Nebraska's in the house. We're ready to mobilize.
New Jersey.
Forward together. New Jersey is in the house.
New York.
And energizing.
Energizing.
New York is in the house and we are ready to go.
All right. Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's in the house and we're organizing and we're ready to go.
South Carolina.
South Carolina's ready.
All right. Tennessee.
Tennessee, the volunteer state, is going to show up.
All right. North Carolina. Who's from North Carolina? That's North Carolina. All right. All right. Texas.
Texas is in the house and we are mobilizing.
Washington State.
Washington State is in the house.
Washington D.C.
mobilizing.
All right, Washington, D.C. All right, they say they're ready and stay ready. And West Virginia.
We're in the house and we're mobilizing.
Is there anybody that I didn't call? Say it.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
We're mobilizing.
Who else?
Kansas is in the house. And we're
Kansas.
mobilizing.
All right.
Missouri will be there.
Missouri.
Getting together with all y'all.
All right. Anybody else? Oregon. Anybody else? Florida. Anybody else?
You got North Carolina, right?
North Carolina did do it twice. It would be nice anyway. Anybody else? So what you all, and so the media's purpose. Who's that? Which one? Mississippi.
Mississippi.
M-I-S-S-I-S-S-I, humpback, I. All right. And what we want the media to know is that not only will people be coming on 29th, but if they're way away, they'll be doing watch gatherings, mobilizing gatherings. They'll watch it and then afterwards do mobilizing to mobilize people to vote. We are serious about this. It's time to go offensive. It's time to use our power. It's time to mobilize it and make it felt. And so we want to recognize everybody there. Now we want to call on those of you who are in the house to come up and say why you're mobilizing. We know the live stream may go off with C-SPAN, but we're going to stay on the other live stream. So at this time, we want to bring up USSW. We want to bring up Presbyterians, Reverend Jimmy Hawkins. That's a whole nother connection, me and Jimmy Hawkins. And I'll tell you about it, Liz, one day if you give me $20. I'll tell you everything on Common Cause, right after Jimmy. and then Good Trouble, Make It Plain with Reverend Thompson, then I'll come back and call the rest of the folk. 2 minutes, come on, at this time. Hey, man.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Winston, and I'm a record leader for the Union of Southern Service Workers, and I'm a catering cook for the Durham Bulls. I started organizing because I'm sick and tired of the circles of poverty that comes from being in the service industry. I'm tired of working different low-wage jobs over and over, thinking that just working hard will get me what I need. I'm tired of seeing my elders in my life struggle to get by doing the same work I do. I'm working 60 to 70 hours a week and still not having money for bills. I'm tired of getting sick and not being able to see the doctor, having to make a choice to pay rent, light bill, food, or even child support. I organize today because I'm sick and tired of fighting by myself. There's more people in my situation that may not look like me, but we go through the same struggles. So we only need to vote for politicians who will uphold workers' rights. I'm here today because 2024 is an election year, and we have the right to have our voices heard at the polls. Our right to vote is a precious right that our ancestors fought for. Many people died for our right to vote. So as working people, we should only vote for politicians who support the rights of workers, period. We need strong unions and a seat at the table. We need the minimum wage to be raised to a living wage, consistent scheduling and health and safety on the job, and we need to be protected from discrimination, period.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My vote is reserved for politicians who will honor these demands. While we need to organize and put pressure, in addition to voting for the right people, I'll say this: we need to build unions with strong organizations and strong unions within our workplaces so we can put grassroots pressures on anybody who stands in our way. We need to build bridges between each other and not let the bosses or politicians divide us. When we fight for unity, there's nothing we can't achieve. And the only way we win is to organize to take.
That's right.
Forward together, we'll step back.
That's right. Reverend Hawkins, would you come, and Virginia, come together. We're going to do some unity here.
All right. I come on behalf of the Presbyterian Church USA to say that the Presbyterian Church stands with the Poor People's Campaign as it organizes poor and low-income people, and we will be present for the Moral March on Washington on June the 29th here in Washington, D.C. We as Presbyterians commit ourselves to being a moral ally as we stand with the Poor People's Campaign in its call for fair and comprehensive wages for low-wage workers who deserve to make enough money to feed their children, to provide warm clothing in the winter and cool clothing in the summer, a call for full and universal health care for all people. We stand with the Poor People's Campaign in its call for justice and integrity on the part of the United States Supreme Court in its rulings that should favor those who are facing discrimination and who need a fair arbitrator of justice. This is a call for the restoration of the Voting Rights Act. People have a right to vote in this country. It is not a privilege, and we stand with the Poor People's Campaign for all of the issues of justice for which it is putting forth. The Presbyterian Church will be there with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jimmy, stay with her.
There you go. My name is Virginia K. Suleiman. I'm the president and CEO of Common Cause. Our organization was founded in 1971 to be the people's lobby because corporations and everybody else with money tends to have representatives in our state houses and in Congress, but yet we don't. And that's why we are here today, partnering with the Poor People's Campaign and all of you, because we believe that this march is not only moral and just, and it's not just about getting voters out to the polls. It is about keeping our feet on the backs of politicians who have been elected, who have forgotten who they are accountable to. Let's not forget, it's not just about going to we're not all done come November 6th.
That's right. That's right.
There is a follow-up to this that is critically important, because we have to hold them accountable, because the reality is, had we done our job and held them accountable, now I'm not trying to victim blame over here, but what I will say is had we done our job, our agenda would have been enacted already. Because we wouldn't keep voting in the same people. So we have a responsibility to make sure that poor and low-wage workers, and I just want to commend the people who have spoken here today and been vulnerable and shared their stories, because it is hard. I was a teenage mom. I needed WIC. I needed food stamps. I needed help to get by. And but for the grace of God and good government programs, because this was a long time ago, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now. And everybody should have the same opportunities, access, and have that safety net and support when it is needed, because we don't want charity. People want to be able to live a life. Live a life. And so that is why we are here today, not only to commit to the Moral March, not only to commit to this action on June 29th, and Common Cause will be there, and we will turn up and we will turn out, but it is to be in solidarity with each of you and every poor and low wealth earner in this country who wants to have their voice heard, and to make sure that we stand together beyond November 5th to make sure that we hold our elected politicians accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Our sister is clear, and I'm glad she brought it up. Don't think that Liz and I are talking about this mobilizing 200 people and touching 15 million to just end on November. We're going to know where they are. We're going to keep all those contacts. We're going to continue to have folk, because we want to hear from these candidates. What are you going to do the first 50 days? You're going to tell us now so we know our votes can be support. It's not about party. It's about support. It's about support for policy, not just for individual and personality. Am I right? So at this time, we want to ask to come together. We've got our dear sister to come up. Where is it? Who's with the Jewish Women, National Council of Jewish Women, Sheila. And then we want to ask Imam Sharif. He is on the screen, I believe. And we want to ask Mark Thompson. I'm calling y'all in this order to come. Would you come all at this time? Come on, Mark, and stand with Sheila, our dear sister. Just had a good conversation with Rick Jacobs and them and others. And then UAA Rev, come on up and stand together. Let's stand together. Yeah. We bring everybody together.
Yeah. Chag Sameach, happy Passover. As we gather during this holy time for Jews, we reflect on Passover's story of liberation for the Jewish people. We remember Moses' plea to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." True liberation, however, is not achieved by solitary leaders, but by the collective efforts of a Kehillah Kedosha, a holy community, a community that rises against the multitude of oppressions plaguing our society. Today, we confront the pervasive injustices that afflict our nation: systemic racism, economic exploitation, Christian nationalism, misogyny, homophobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, ableism, and more. These injustices manifest in policies that perpetuate poverty, deny health care, and suppress the voices of marginalized communities. But we refuse to accept this reality. We refuse to be complacent in the face of injustice. Together, we mourn the victims of gun violence, racism, and bigotry. Together, we reject the erosion of women's rights and human dignity. Together, we commit to bending the moral arc of the universe toward justice. Together, we mobilize to get 15 million poor and low-wage and infrequent voters to the polls. Inspired by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, we pray with our feet, marching to the polls, using our vote as our voice, and demanding an end to poverty and systemic oppression, because it is our turn now to find the courage and collective power to dismantle the modern-day pharaohs and systems of oppression that plague our nation.
Wow, modern day.
Thank you.
Sharif had sickness. I won't go any further because we're on TV and whatever, but he had to step off, but he sends his love and say that we will stand united. Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Unitarian, all of us will stand united.
Amen. Good morning. and thank you to Bishop Barber for gathering us all here. The Good Trouble coalition of over 50 organizations came together to organize the March on Washington in 2021, and we've stayed together to try to continue to educate, organize, and mobilize around urgent issues such as these. There are a myriad of issues that we face in our communities, amongst our constituencies, all gathered here, and honored to be here with all of our comrades, some of whom are members of the Good Trouble Coalition. And sometimes it's challenging to figure out what issue to fight at this time. There are so many, but it is our contention, my contention, that wherever there's a lack of these things, there's an abundance of poverty and low wages. And so we come together around this issue because this overlaps all of these other issues. Wherever there's a lack of health care and voting rights and LGBT rights and immigrant rights, there's an abundance of poverty. Wherever there's a lack of jobs and labor unions and sensible gun laws and women's bodily autonomy, there is an abundance of poverty. Wherever there's a lack of racial justice and legal rights, criminal justice reform, and access to adequate legal representation, and alternatives to incarceration, and police reform, wherever those things are in lack, there's an abundance of poverty. And wherever there's a lack of what is now under attack, diversity, equity, and inclusion, affirmative action, investment in education, a lack of educational opportunities, there's an abundance of poverty. And Sheila's exactly right. Wherever there's a lack of religious tolerance, racial harmony, and a beloved community, there's an abundance of poverty. And so, sisters and brothers, we never need to ask permission to do the Lord's work. I contend we do not need to ask permission to finish Dr. King's work. He didn't retire. The Poor People's Campaign folks didn't come together and decide, we're just not going to do this anymore because we're bored and we're not interested. We know what happened, and it is our duty to pick up this baton and move forward. And lastly, they always talk about the people who don't want to vote. People aren't going to vote. But they never talk about the impoverished and low-wage individuals. And we want to lift them up and bring them forward. And if we address these issues, we'll address all these others. So God bless you all. Forward together, not one step back.
There were 15 presidential debates in 2020, and not one of them took 10 minutes even to talk about the policies that would impact 140 million people at that time and 295,000 people that were dying from it. No more. No more. We will center poor and low-wage people into the center of our political debates, discussion, and policy making. And make it clear this is a march. It's about love, it's about truth, it's about justice, it's about nonviolence, it's about hope, and it's about building righteous power for good. At this time, we want to ask Reverend Abi to come to UUA. We want to ask Reverend Gail Holiness, if she's still here, and Mariah to come. We have Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, I think, online, if they're still online. And Forward Justice is online, so they will come at the end of those who are here. Reverend Dr. Chris Zacharias and Reverend Dr. Jackson. So in this order, Reverend Abi, if you'd come, Gail, Mariah, and Chris, and then we'll do the ones online. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Reverend Barber and Reverend Dr. Theoharis, for bringing us together. I am with the Unitarian Universalist Association and Hindus for Human Rights, two movements that are guided by the principles of affirming and promoting the inherent worth, dignity, and divinity of every person, and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I am guided by the ancient Hindu text from the Upanishads, Sarvesham swastir bhavatu, Sarvesham shantir bhavatu, Sarvesham purnam bhavatu, Sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. May all be well, may all be peaceful, may all be whole, may all be fit for excellence, and may no one suffer. We are at a critical moment in our nation's history where the very essence of our democracy is under threat. And that's not an understatement or an overstatement. Across our land, policies are being proposed and passed that erode the foundations of our democratic principles, denying basic rights to millions of our fellow neighbors. And as we confront this harsh reality, we must ask ourselves the question, what kind of democracy do we want to live in? Because it's a staggering truth that over 135 million people in our nation are poor or just one emergency away from economic devastation. Millions of workers earn less than a living wage, with women and people of color disproportionately affected, and yet the voices of poor and low-wage workers are too often ignored in political campaigns. We find ourselves in a moral crisis, and we have allowed poverty to become the fourth leading cause of death in the wealthiest country in the world. We should be ashamed. In a nation of abundant resources where poverty could be eradicated with political resolve, the voices of poor and low-wage people must not be ignored. And therefore, we are mobilizing and organizing for a movement that champions the rights of all, prioritizing access to health care, debt relief, living wages, and robust anti-poverty initiatives, and an expansion, not suppression, of voting rights. And we confront the insidious influence of militarism and the war economy, perpetuating violence at home and abroad. And we urgently demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, enabling critical humanitarian aid to the people and the release of all captives. So let us compel our elected officials to use their positions to address these pressing issues and urge voters to scrutinize where candidates stand on these critical matters. Our votes are not just for support, nor are they entitlements of support. They are our moral demands for systemic change. And so, friends, join us in this urgent call for change. Join us with the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, mobilizing in Washington, D.C. on June 29th, and to the polls and beyond, where our voices will be heard and our demands for change will not be ignored. Forward together.
Not one step back. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My fellow advocates, partners, and champions of justice, I am a reverend from the historical African Methodist Episcopal Church, consisting of over 7,000 congregation and 2.5 million members across the globe. As I stand here today, united with you all by a shared commitment to both justice and equality, we are reminded of the profound challenges facing our nation. This national call for moral revival seeks to ignite a flame of hope. In the hearts of millions, calling upon us to confront the interlocking injustices that grip our society today. On June 29th, I am so excited to partner alongside thousands of my fellow human beings for this mass moral march on Washington. It is a mobilization of unprecedented scale as we reach out to 15 million infrequent voters across the country. And in this critical moment when our democracy hangs in the balance, we must stand as moral witnesses and mobilize for a movement vote to save our democracy and to save the hearts of this nation. You all, we are in the middle of a moral crisis, a crisis that is marked by the grotesque disparity between billionaire wealth and the prevalence of poverty. But let me be clear, we do not lack resources. We do not lack solutions. What we lack is political will. It is time for a third reconstruction, a bold vision that builds upon the transformative legacies of our past. And so we call upon our elected officials, we heed the voices of the people to use their power to enact meaningful change. And we call upon the people, like my sister said, to hold them accountable. to stand with us in this fight for justice and equality. We can no longer allow those in power to speak louder than those in need. It is time to take back the mic and get loud. Forward together, not one step back.
Yes. We're so thankful for the AME Church. Now AME Zion. You got the AME and AME Zion together.
AME Zion in the house, the Freedom Church, Reverend Dr. Zacharias, Faith Chair, Chair of our D.C. Poor People. Every faith tradition tells us that health and vitality of a society is judged on how it cares for people impacted by systems of poverty and treats the most vulnerable of us. The way back to health says the prophet Isaiah, make justice your aim, redress the wrong, hear the orphan's plea, defend the widow. And as a faith leader, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us of the urgency of now, which demands a democracy in which workers make a living wage. Right now, even low-income Washington, D.C. residents make up 39.6% of the state population. To meet basic needs, 2 adults with 2 children must earn over $29 an hour as a minimum wage is increasing in D.C. An individual must still work 83 hours a week to make ends meet, to reach $70,000 a year to live comfortably. The rising cost of living has contributed to Washington, D.C. having one of the largest homeless populations in the country, with 9.3 people per 1,000 residents experiencing homelessness. This has to stop. Poverty must stop. And as a faith leader, I'm willing to help it stop. AME Zion Church is mobilizing all faith leaders to join the movement to fight for living wages, health care, and affordable housing and voter mobilization. When we do this, the poor and low-income eligible voters will go to the polls and sway the election outcomes for their betterment. If you are a faith leader, and moral and religious leaders must address and challenge the interlocking systems, evils of poverty, racism, ecological devastation, militarism, and warped moral narrative of Christian militarism. Join us. If you believe that moral and religious leaders must address and challenge abolishing poverty as the 4th leading cause in the United States, join us. If you believe that moral and religious leaders must address, then challenge the living minimum wage of at least $15 an hour, indexed or for inflation. If you are a faith leader, believe in full and expanded voter rights, no more voter suppression, join us. If you are a faith leader, believe in guaranteed workers' rights, labor rights, health care for all, and affordable and adequate housing for all, then join us. Because on June 29th, a rally cry of demands of a right now action of demands to end hate and division, extremist political agenda. The moral cry of the poor will be heard. Join the Poor People's Campaign and the movement, because we're forward together. Not one step. Amen.
I'm Alvin Jackson with the Repairers of the Breach. I'm pleased and proud to stand here today with Bishop Barber, Dr. Liz Theoharis, my General Minister and President, Reverend Terry Howard Owens, and all of our anchor partners, and with all of you. I'm pleased and proud to stand ready for a resurrection, not an insurrection. June 29th, 2024, 3rd and Pennsylvania in Washington, D.C. And I'm also happy today to announce a new initiative of Repairers of the Breach, a new initiative in the season of holy seasons, Passover for our Jewish siblings, Ramadan recently completed for our Muslim friends, and Pentecost coming for the Christian community. I'm pleased to announce a new initiative of Repairers of the Breach, Keeping the Faith campaign. Keeping the Faith campaign, where we are calling on faith leaders to sign the New Haven Declaration. New Haven Declaration reclaiming our prophetic voice and speaking and preaching and teaching and leading on the big moral issues of our day, not being distracted by things that distract us, but preaching on the prophetic issues of the day, signing the New Haven Declaration. Secondly, we have started screenings, 50+ screenings all across the country of the film, the powerful documentary, Christian Nationalism's Unholy War on Democracy. Faith communities all over the country are signing up. Alabama, see the Reverend Carolyn Foster just signed up for 7 screenings in the state of Alabama. And we're calling on faith communities during the Pentecost weekend to screen and host screenings of this film. We are using the screenings to organize and mobilize for June 29th. So we invite you to sign up and join us in that. And I'm happy to announce that a lectionary resource is being made available, the Forward Together lectionary resource. We hope this resource will be used by all of our communions. It's a powerful preaching, teaching resource leading up to June 29th. The email is keepfaith@breachrepairers.org. keepfaith@breachrepairers.org. Write us, respond to us, because what? We're standing and we're ready for June 29th. Not an insurrection, but we're ready for a resurrection. We are ready for a resurrection. Forward together.
Dr. Forward justice. Forward justice. Whew. Forward justice. And Kentuckians for Commonwealth. You online?
Yes, I'm here online. You all hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Janelle Bruce, and I'm an attorney with Forward Justice, one of the anchoring organizations for the June 29th, 2024 Mass Poor Peoples and Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls. Forward Justice is committed to organizing and mobilizing people to DC because we recognize the dire state of our nation with 135 million poor and low-income people, the push to disenfranchise our citizens, and voter suppression happening in the South and across the nation. Change the South, change the nation. With unprecedented attacks, we must remain steadfast and committed to action. That's why we'll be in DC, and that's why we're going back to court next Monday to challenge North Carolina's discriminatory voter ID law. Not only will we fight racist voting laws, we will keep fighting for the voting rights of formerly incarcerated people who legislators seek to silence through disenfranchisement. If our votes didn't matter, there would not be such a push to control and eliminate our ability to vote freely. We must demand the expansion and not the rollback of voting rights. People's voices matter. Poor people's voices matter. Incarcerated people's voices matter. Despite the money spent on mass incarceration, the condition in our nation's jails and prisons are horrific. Prisons are understaffed, medical care is often delayed or denied, there's sometimes no running water, and mold and bug infestations are causing illnesses with our people.
That's right.
Incarcerated people are being harmed, beaten, and even killed by correctional officers, while those contracted to run the prisons become rich. We must see change. In 2023, the federal government spent $1.1 trillion on wars and weapons, law enforcement, mass incarceration, deportation, and detention. This is unacceptable when 40% of people in the U.S. are poor, low income, and as we heard today, struggling to make ends meet.
Janelle?
We must organize and prepare for the third Reconstruction. We stand with the campaign's call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the machine. Yes, Bishop.
Yeah, we're going to have to move because we've way over our time. What I wanted you to make sure you let folk know that you all and the other legal groups are going to be handling this legal press, because some people know, there are people that try to trip you up when you start talking about moving and registering voters. We got the issues, but what we want Forward Justice and what we want the Center for Constitutional Law and the others is to make sure you let the folk know and the media know that's here that you all are surrounding us with the legal protection that we need in every state. That's the piece we need. Thank you so much. Kentuckians for the Commonwealth.
Hey, it's Tana out here in Kentucky. This is our short name is KFTC, Forward Together, Not One Step Back. We want you to know that we are mobilizing here in Kentucky. And on June the 29th, and we're mobilizing people to get to the polls, but we are excited about June the 29th. We will be in D.C. We will be strong as usual. We will bring our voices, and we need this movement. We need people to vote in Kentucky. We need these awesome suppressive laws to be overturned. We're looking forward to coming to D.C. I'm going to keep it short and keep it sweet. Forward together, not one step back. We're on our way.
All right, on our way. I like that. And so as we come to close, members of the media, you can have questions after we close this. Is that right, Joe? We do have several things. The website's going live today. We have this flyer, but there's another flyer that has Liz and my picture on it. We want to push that out. The next time we're going to have a flyer with all of the various emblems and symbols and of the anchor partners. We're going to have on June the 3rd a united press conference with all of the states. They'll be doing press conferences in their state, and we'll probably come back with another with additional anchors. We continue to build and build and build. We're going to be pushing out. Last time we ended up with over 400 persons that were anchors. And so what we also are glad is that we don't have to have a purist unity. We're not going to engage in that. We are uniting around what matters. You know, sometimes folk have to have such a purist they can't organize. And I do want to make sure we say not only that last piece, but also we stand against the genocide that is happening to poor people around this world, Somalia, the Congo. We got to lift up those things as well. What has happened historically to Native Americans and continues to happen. We cannot just look past those things. But at the front of all of this, as Mark said, how it unites us, as Liz said, how it unites, you cannot talk about a democracy and not deal with poverty and low income and low wage. You just can't, because what you have without that is an impoverished democracy. And you have an impoverished democracy where you do not establish justice, you are not promoting the general welfare, you are not providing for the common defense, and when none of those things happen, you cannot ensure domestic tranquility. Actually, you ensure the opposite, that there will be domestic pain and disunity and hurt because of the pain that exists. That does not have to be. That does not have to be. I remember one day, Liz, when you and I were talking, and Liz said something I've never forgotten. She was just kind of talking one day, and she said, Rambo, this ain't radical. It's just right. You know, living wage, not something radical. It's not some, I mean, it's radical to folk that don't want to do it. And if they were more interested in the 400 families that make $97,000 an hour while they're arresting people that make 15 or less, but it's really just right. And we're calling on this nation to do right. We're not just giving up our votes anymore, nor are we staying home. We're doing this before the conventions. Why? Because after you see the massive power all over the country, conventions you'll have an opportunity to address. That's why we're doing it in June and not in August or September. This is very strategic. And we're also finally going to be calling on the Senate or the House, either one, to bring up two pieces of bills, where living wages and voting rights. It makes no sense that we got one vote on living wages and that ended it. We lost, and one on voting rights. Bring it up after the 29th, pass it, and force either the House or force either the Senate to deal with it so that people know where you stand by where you vote. And then say, and if you get, and what we want to hear, what people want to hear is not your party, but they want to hear, if we get elected, this is what we're going to do in these areas. This is the change that's going to come in the first 50, 100 days. You don't have to worry then about whether we endorse you personally. If you talk to the people, if you talk to poor, low-wage people, these 87 million people, they will talk back to you at the ballot box. Forward together. Yara, would you come up and close us out here? Can we all stand together all around this room, just stand together? Powerful day today. We'll be meeting soon together. Thank all of you for coming, those of you able to stay. Some people had things they had to do, but they were here, amen? They were here. Also, Bishop Flunder wanted me to tell you that T-Fam is in. the T fam is in. She sent a text, said, make sure that that you know that the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries is fully engaged in our effort. Yara? Where'd she go? Why is she all the way behind me? Get away from me.
All right. This is amazing. This is beautiful. So I stand also on behalf of co-director Sharon Rebar, and together we co-direct the Theomusicology and Movement Arts with the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And we are organizing artists from over 30 states. Over 30 states. 2 years ago, we had 17 states represented, so we can see the growth. This year, over 30 states will be represented in music. You know something, Dr. Bernice Reagan said of the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, that artists were out there putting their bodies, their lives against the system. And then it was the incomparable Miss Nina Simone who said that, in my opinion, the duty of an artist is to reflect the times. And so the artists of today are doing just that, reflecting the times that we're living in. Also, I want to remind you that it was Mavis Staples who talked about how she came to sing the justice music. Her father met Dr. King, and on the way out after that meeting, he said, I really love what he's talking about. And you know what, girls? If he can preach it, we can sing it. Uh-oh. And so the artists are prepared to lift music with messages. We are ready to stand and put our voices and our bodies against a system of oppression. So on June 29th, we will be calling on some of your artists and your organizations as well to form this beautiful moral fusion choir. The choir will be made up of impacted people, clergy, just a beautiful diversity of folks that cross lines of demarcation. And so we're ready to sing. And here's what we're gonna do. We have one song, you heard a snippet of it, where we sing, Take Back the Mic and Tell the Truth. So it's sort of a chant. So consider this choir rehearsal so that when you hear it on June 29th, you'll be ready. But the words are, and you'll repeat after me, take back the mic. Take back the mic. Take back the mic. Take back the mic.
Take back the mic.
And tell the truth.
And tell the truth.
Take back the mic.
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 And tell the truth. And then we say, take back the mic and tell the truth. There's power in our vote. It's up to me and you. We're not an insurrection. We are a resurrection. A stone that's been rejected by those who were elected. Take back the mic. Take back the mic. Come on, let me hear you. Take back the mic and tell the truth. Take back the mic. Take back the mic. Take back the mic and tell the truth. See you June 29th.
All right. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. You're doing good. I'm well by his grace. Good. It's been too long. Did you know Sherry before?
That's such a big trip.
Okay.